Good morning, Penny Stewart from the Gananoque Horticultural Society. A little talk on spring bulbs. It's the time of year to put them out in your garden for next spring so that April, May is bright and cheerful. But one of the things I like to do, and I do this every year, I do at least one pot of bulbs up in advance, put them in a cool spot, and they will sprout early so that by very, very early March, as soon as we have some warm sunny days, I can put it against my back door. And then, early April, I have a pot of just gorgeous blooms. So, how do you do that? I've heard this referred to as a 7-layer planter, like a 7-layer dip. A fairly good sized pot so that there's ample space in it. Soil in the bottom, bit of drainage below that. You start with those bulbs that require the deepest growth. So we have hyacinth bulbs, which have to go in at 6 inches. We have daffodils, different shape. They go in at 6 inches. Tulips go in at 6 inches. Crocus, Dutch iris, little squill, and muscari go in at 3 inches, and they're tiny. So, sort of decide on your color scheme here. I've got sort of orangey red doubles, some red minuets. These are blazing star. These are a yellow narcissus daffodil with a bright, bright orange center, which I thought would pick up off my tulips. This is Caribbean Dream. It is a pale blue hyacinth. Should be quite nice. So, we got our soil in our pot. It should be not wet, but a little bit damp. You do want the daffodils in particular to get a bit of a root going. They're the one thing that need to be planted earlier than other bulbs. Daffodils should go in by the end of September, early October. Tulips, hyacinths, crocus, you can be planting them even after there's frost in the ground as long as you can break through the frost layer. So, I've got about 6 inches of depth here. I'm going to group my bulbs. So I'm going to group 3 nice blue hyacinths right there. They come up a certain height. The blazing star narcissus, I'm going to just tuck them in behind there. They will be a little taller. So you just create a pattern of bulbs. We're then going to cover them with soil. Now, depending on how big your pot is, that will, of course, vary how many bulbs you can put in. But you can pack them in fairly close in a planter like this. They're a little closer than you would put in a flower garden. But the idea is to have some impact. So we've got that with some nice color. We're going to add enough soil to bring it almost up to the top, but we got to go about 3 inches down here. About that much in. So they're well covered. So we've now got 3 inches left, and then we're going to put the crocus. Now I'm going to place the crocus kind of out towards the edge because they're smaller. Not right against the edge because you do want some protection for them. And I'm just going to put a whole group of little crocus there. If I had iris or squill, I would mix them together. Most bulbs, you can see, have a little bit of a hairy root. That's the bottom. The top is there. With tulips, not really any root growth, but there is a root portion. And with tulips, it's very simple, pointy side up. Same thing, daffodils, there's the root, pointy side up. So just put a few more of those in there. Bring them the right side down. Cover with soil. 3 inches of soil on top of there. Now I will put this in the garage. I'll put a little bit of mulch on it, just a thin layer of mulch. And then I usually cut newspaper and put a layer of newspaper on, mainly to keep it tidy. Our garage, the proper garage, goes down below freezing, so that's not good. But we have a foyer that stays usually just at freezing, is the lowest it gets. I just put it in there, don't cover it with plastic or anything, leave it so that it doesn't mold. You can check during the winter, just with your hand, make sure it hasn't totally dried out. If it has, just a tiny bit of moisture. And then starting about the middle of February, keep your eye out, because all of a sudden you'll start and see little tips. That means it's time to move it out and give it some of the nice sun. If it's really going to be cold, bring it back in at night. You'll start to get the sprouts coming up, and usually by then you will also maybe see, just breaking your surface of your garden, a few bulbs. But these ones will already be up, and you'll have a very pretty display. And you can basically dress this up as well. Once they come out, you can add a ribbon, you can add a little rabbit for the spring. So you can turn this into a bit of a planter as well at the back door. And when you're finished, after everything's bloomed in the spring, what I do is I give it a really good watering so it all stays kind of compact. I go and dig a hole the same depth as this, and then I slide the entire contents out into the garden in the hole, and that creates a new bulb spot for the following year. And then I, set aside my planter for next year. So, another great idea to give yourself some color in the spring. Get some bulbs. Most of my bulbs here came from Made in the Shade. Laura and her daughter have a wonderful selection of bulbs in. So do this now and give yourself some bright color and joy in the spring. Happy gardening.